was in LA. It was the LA team, and it was just some LA shit, and it was in SoFi, and I just felt like game should have been there, and I wasn't. And yeah, that shit definitely did hurt my feelings, so I just took the shit out on M.
The Game just threw shade at Kendrick Lamar, and the internet is exploding over it. During a recent podcast, The Game downplayed Kendrick's entire legacy, brushing off his rise in rap like it was nothing. He said, "He's cool, but he ain't done nothing I didn't already do." People forget who ran the West first.
Never sees Kendrick as competition.
Can't nobody in Countdown rap game.
That one line lit up social media like wildfire. Fans weren't having it. Artists weren't either. It didn't take long for people to start calling The Game out for what they see as straight up jealousy. And here's the wild twist. Kendrick has always given The Game credit for inspiring him early on. But now that Kendrick's being crowned the new king of the West, The Game clearly ain't ready to hand over the throne. According to insiders, this beef's been simmering behind the scenes for a while. The Game's been feeling overlooked and underappreciated, like the industry forgot just how hard he carried the West in the early 2000s. But instead of getting his flowers, he's watching Kendrick dominate the game in real time. And the fans are calling it like they see it. Bitter, Twitter, TikTok, all of it.
Nigga, Kendrick, my nigga, Kendrick do his shit. I love that nigga to death. I love Kendrick to death, but I nigga flew past Kendrick when that nigga was on foot, Range Rover, and showed him how to do this shit. Don't play, nigga, play with game name. Nigga. Compton, nigga, hardest, Compton, rapping, lyricist, me. Any nigga say any different, body him in the nigga he fuck with.
Folks are saying The Game's acting out of pure insecurity, trying to dim Kendrick's light instead of leveling up his own. It's looking less like a friendly critique and more like a straight-up envy trip. Kendrick, meanwhile, keeps elevating, while The Game, he's getting dragged into a messy narrative he might not be ready to handle. Beyond all the hype and respect Kendrick Lamar gets, this video's about to break down why so many people ride for him and what The Game might be missing. You can decide for yourself, but the full picture needs to be laid out before jumping to conclusions. Now let's be real. Rappers claiming they're the best, that's nothing new. It's baked into the culture of hip-hop. Confidence, cockiness, flexing your wins, that's all part of the game. But things get messy when that flex turns into throwing shade at others, especially someone like Kendrick. It's not about saying, "I'm great." It's when the brag starts sounding like, "You're nothing." That's where fans draw the line. And The Game didn't just claim his spot, he tried to undercut Kendrick by pointing to material things, basically saying he was already rich and flashy before Kendrick even got noticed. Like that's proof he's the better artist. That's wild because in hip-hop, success isn't just about who had the Benz first. Just because one rapper had luxury rides before another broke out doesn't mean they're more skilled or more impactful. And tying artistry to money, that's a slippery slope. The way The Game framed it, like his early wealth automatically makes him superior to Kendrick, rubbed a lot of people the wrong way. It's giving insecure, not legendary. Here's the thing, The Game's argument just ain't holding up. Kendrick literally shouted him out in Black Boy Fly, showing love and admiration for artists who made it out of Compton.
And I've been in this motherfucker since 2003, right? Because that's when I got signed to Aftermath, 2003. If you ask anybody, you know, anybody that really know me that's in this motherfucking industry, and go ask Dr. Dre, man. Like, sit Dr. Dre down and really ask that about who I am and my character and, you know, like what he really feel about me at the end of the day as a man. So if you could ask Nip himself, he would have told you, and he did tell you out his own mouth what, you know, I contributed, you know, to his career. Coming straight out of West Side, Cedar Block, Bompton, and Top Dog know what it is, Kendrick know what it is, Mustard know what it is, Ty Dolla $ign know what it is, Dr. Dre know what it is, Snoop know what it is.
And that included The Game. But the way The Game flipped that moment, kinda twisted. In the song, Kendrick opened up about growing up in Compton and looking up to local stars who made it. It wasn't some diss, it wasn't a rivalry, it was straight up respect. But The Game took one line where Kendrick mentioned him and turned it into this whole idea that he was the blueprint for Kendrick's career. Like that one shout out means Kendrick owes him everything. That's wild because the entire message of Black Boy Fly was about inspiration and personal growth, not about handing out crowns. Kendrick mentioned several hometown figures in the track. It was a tribute to the environment, to the people who showed what was possible, not a spotlight on just one man. But The Game locked in on that one line and ran with it. Instead of seeing the bigger message, he zeroed in on his name like it proves something bigger than it really does. Yeah, both of them are from the same place, same genre, and both legends in their own right, So naturally, folks will compare. But rivalry, that's a mindset. And the game clearly sees Kendrick as competition, even if Kendrick ain't paying him no mind. Now here's where things get even messier. The game straight up admitted he was drunk when he made some of those wild comments. That might explain the tone, but it doesn't excuse it, especially when it's not the first time he's leaned on alcohol as a pass.
He says a lot of people's names for shock value. He says things he doesn't mean. He says a lot of things to take it back. You know, he had issues with Joe Buttons, then he runs into him in a club and they're taking pictures. He had issues with Memphis Bleak, then he ran into Memphis Bleak in Miami. It was no problem. See, I'm not a fake person. I'm gonna tell you exactly what it is. He has a lot of inconsistencies.
Let's be real. This isn't some new artist fresh in the game. This is a veteran pushing 50 with years in the industry. Blaming liquor over and over starts sounding less like a slip-up and more like a pattern. At some point, folks expect accountability, not just another round of "I was faded." And trust, this excuse is gonna come up again as the story plays out. But it's worth pausing to look at how other major artists handle their mess. Let's take 50 Cent, for example. Yeah, he's known for clowning folks online and never backing down from beef, but behind the scenes, he knew how to keep things professional when it counted, especially with big names like Dr. Dre and Eminem. Even if there was tension, 50 played it smart. He understood the long game. Respect, loyalty, and business always came first. That's the type of discipline that keeps artists relevant for decades.
And I used to think Eminem was better than me.
So what you saying right now?
He's not. Challenge. Hey, challenge it.
Game, you don't want to go versus against
Yes,
Eminem.
I do. What do you mean? Yeah, I do. What the f you mean?
Meanwhile, the game's been out here saying, even sober, that he's a better rapper than Eminem. That's not just confidence, it's a whole mindset. But when the public missteps start stacking up and alcohol keeps getting blamed, people start questioning more than just the bars. They start questioning the judgment. It's one thing for artists to be confident. That's part of the game. But when those bold claims come at the worst possible time, people start asking questions. In this case, the game made some of his wildest remarks while clearly intoxicated. And this ain't just a one-off, it's becoming a whole pattern. That old saying, "a drunk mind speaks a sober heart," really starts to hit different here. Because the game doesn't just drink casually, he's often spotted deep in the nightlife scene, clubbing, partying, bottles in hand. So now fans are wondering, is this really just booze talk? Or are these his true thoughts slipping out with no filter? And things got real strange when he started throwing out shade about someone's connection to Diddy during an Atlanta party. The way he worded it was full of slick innuendo, enough to get people whispering. And given the long-standing rumors and drama surrounding Diddy's party lifestyle, it didn't take much for speculation to spiral out of control. But here's the problem, dropping hints like that, especially when tipsy, blurs the line between trash talk and straight-up reckless accusation. Let's be clear, Diddy's been hosting massive industry parties for years, and tons of big names have shown up without it ever meaning anything shady. So tossing out implications with no real proof, that just creates drama out of thin air. Now, as the chaos around the game's recent comments keep spreading, it's time to look at something more concrete. The real-world fallout from his strained relationships in the industry. And one moment that stands out big time, the 2022 Super Bowl halftime show. That situation said a lot without him saying a word.
Because 50 can't rap. And so I got to go a level up and challenge the better rapper.
In 2022, Dr. Dre pulled off something legendary. He brought together Kendrick Lamar, Snoop Dogg, Eminem, Mary J. Blige, and 50 Cent for a jaw-dropping Super Bowl halftime show at SoFi Stadium. The performance was a massive cultural moment, celebrated across the board, but one name was loudly missing from that lineup: The Game. And he wasn't quiet about it either. The Game made it very clear he felt disrespected for not being included. But when you really look at how that lineup came together, it wasn't just about who repped the West Coast. It was about legacy, unity, and professionalism. The Game's absence didn't feel like some last-minute forget. It felt like a deliberate statement. Because when you publicly call out almost everyone on that stage, and even have a violent past with one of the performers, how can anyone act surprised when you're left off the invite list? This wasn't about loyalty to LA. It was about keeping the energy right for a historic moment. And the Game's long track record of calling folks out, especially Eminem and 50 Cent, only made his exclusion more inevitable. Even if apologies were made behind closed doors, some people don't forget. And in this industry, memory runs deep. His beef with Eminem still simmering, but the root of it, most folks believe it's really about 50 Cent. The Game's still holding on to old tension and reading 50's silence or refusal to work with him as disrespect. But truthfully, that logic doesn't hold up, not when the bigger picture is about unity, legacy, and elevating the culture, not rehashing past drama. At this point, the Game's frustration seems less about music and more about ego. Straight up, it's hard to ride with claims that feel fueled by pride and bitterness instead of real facts. Yeah, the Super Bowl went down in LA, his home turf, but this wasn't a block party. It was a celebration of legacy, unity, and longevity. And when you compare that to the Game's track record, it starts to make sense why he wasn't included. Instead of owning the moment, he spiraled into contradiction. After the show aired, he hit multiple interviews, and that's when the stories started shifting. One moment he's downplaying the snub, the next he's throwing shots at almost everyone who performed. Fans started catching on quick. The math wasn't mathing. The deeper you dig, the more it starts to look like these reactions weren't genuine. They were reactions to not being chosen. That's why it all felt so personal. And suddenly, the issue stops looking like injustice and starts sounding like straight-up entitlement. It's like the Game wants constant recognition. Like if someone drops a beat or a bar, he's claiming they stole from him. Mind you, this is someone who's made millions, stood next to giants, and had real moments of greatness, but none of that seems to satisfy him. There's a heavy vibe of someone watching the spotlight shift and not knowing how to let go. And here's the real problem: unchecked ego. That's the thread tying everything together. From his wild comments to the messy interviews to the bitter call-outs, ego is at the center of it all. And when that ego goes unchecked, it starts burning bridges faster than hits can be made. Instead of letting his music speak for itself, the Game keeps jumping into conversations that had nothing to do with him and trying to dominate them. In one wild example, he claimed Kendrick Lamar was inspired by him just because he was the first blood rapper to go global. Seriously, that's a reach. He completely ignores West Coast legends like DJ Quick, who've been repping long before him and earned their place in hip-hop history. It's like he's trying to rewrite the West Coast story to center himself while erasing the people who came before. And that's not just disrespectful, it's flat out wrong. Then there's that moment he took a jab at 50 Cent, saying he couldn't make great music with anyone else. But let's be real, 50's catalog is filled with major hits without the Game. That claim just falls apart when you look at the facts. But again, it's not really about accuracy. It's about the Game's constant craving for recognition. Now let's get into that Instagram live rant that's been making the rounds. Most of it was a long, emotional spiral, repeating the same tired talking points. But one part had people shook. He claimed he almost owned half of Top Dog Entertainment. Like, what? The live was supposed to be a response to online trolls, but instead, it turned into a weird flex about how he could have owned Kendrick. That comment came out of nowhere and had nothing to do with the topic. But the message underneath it, clear as day. The Game wants control over the narrative, even if it means rewriting the past. It's no longer about defending his name, it's about trying to dominate spaces that moved on without him. Here's where the lines really start to blur. When someone starts listing past favors just to justify their current complaints, you gotta ask, was it ever genuine to begin with? If the love and loyalty were real, why turn those moments into weapons later? It's hard to believe those actions were pure when every unreturned favor suddenly becomes a public receipt. That doesn't sound like integrity. That sounds like someone chasing recognition, not respect. And that wild claim about almost owning half of TDE, let's be honest, if that was true, it might have completely wrecked the label before it even got off the ground. Imagine Kendrick's career stuck under unstable leadership, tied to someone with a rep for messy rollouts, shattered alliances, and a bunch of industry beefs. TDE's rise was built on calculated moves, solid branding, and trust. That's the exact opposite of how the Game's career has played out. Bringing that up now doesn't help his case. It just pulls the focus away from what really matters. Instead of explaining why he was left off the Super Bowl stage, he's trying to throw out these old school flexes that can't even be proven. That's not accountability, that's full-blown deflection. He keeps saying everything he did was off the strength. But then why is he laying out every single thing he did for Top Dog and Nipsey Hussle like an itemized list? If the respect is real and locked in the streets, there's no need to chase clout online. That kind of move exposes the real motive, It's not about legacy, it's about image. And when the ego gets louder than the truth, the whole narrative starts to fall apart. What we're really witnessing here isn't about fairness in the industry, it's about unchecked ego and a desperate need to stay in the spotlight, even when the moment has clearly passed. The game keeps trying to tie himself to movements like Kendrick's rise or Nipsey's legacy, but the way he does it, it feels more like he's trying to own the moment, not honor it. His recent live stream made that vibe crystal clear. He jumped on just to clap back at internet narratives, but the way he did it only confirmed everything critics had been saying. He kept saying, "I don't care what the internet thinks," but then spent almost 20 straight minutes defending himself, justifying his role, and comparing his journey to Kendrick's. The contradiction was loud. On one hand, he's demanding credit, saying he helped build platforms, gave people chances, made moves. On the other hand, he's claiming he doesn't need validation. Which is it? And instead of just addressing why he wasn't part of the Super Bowl, plain and simple, the live stream turned into a messy rundown of favors he did for others, shots at public opinion, and name drops that didn't need to be there. He even brought up what Whack 100 allegedly said, but instead of letting that sit, he used it to dive even deeper into self-praise. The whole thing stopped being about setting the record straight and started sounding like an emotional attempt to compete with someone else's impact. It felt less like truth and more like insecurity on full display. In the end, what could have been a simple explanation turned into a spiraling mix of defensiveness, overcompensation, and a loud cry for validation that nobody even asked for. What could have been a quick 3-minute statement, like how Vince Staples once smoothly explained his own absence, turned into a scattered monologue that exposed way more than intended. Instead of keeping it short and focused, the game went down a rabbit hole of old slights, repeated shout-outs to Kendrick, and a non-stop chase for recognition. And let's be real, this doesn't come off as confidence. It feels wounded. The constant circling back to Kendrick, the obsession with online opinions, and the non-stop defending. It paints a picture of someone deeply shaken by not being part of the conversation anymore, even though he keeps claiming it doesn't bother him. Whether he meant to or not, the game keeps drawing lines between himself and Kendrick, but every time he does, it only widens the gap. Instead of boosting his legacy, these comparisons make it look like he's still trying to prove his worth to people who've already moved on. The live stream was supposed to clear the air, but what it really showed was just how much the game still craves that spotlight. He kept flipping back and forth, comparing himself to Kendrick 1 second, then saying, "That's my brother, we're both from Compton," the next. But the difference? Kendrick ain't on Instagram Live explaining himself to the internet. He lets the work talk. That's what hits hardest. Kendrick doesn't have to remind people of his legacy. He's respected because he moves in silence, while the game is out here doing interviews, lives, and rants just to be heard. When you're really certified in the streets and your impact is known, you don't have to scream it. It speaks for itself. Welcome to the internet era, where everyone gets picked apart, criticized, and trolled. That's just the game now. But for someone who's been in the spotlight for decades, you'd think the game would know when to hold back. Instead, some of these reactions are raising more eyebrows than sympathy. And it's not just about fame or pressure, it's about how he's choosing to respond. After all these years, the constant need to clap back feels way more personal than professional. And that's the issue. When public figures keep saying they're above it all, but then get dragged into every little comment section war, it says more than they realize. That defensive energy, it doesn't quiet the critics, it proves them right. As fans and viewers, all we can do is watch, think, and decide for ourselves. The internet will always talk, that's not changing. But artists, they got to choose how they respond. Because rants might feel good in the moment, but they rarely change the narrative. More often, they lock it in. And that's where the contrast really hits. Kendrick stays quiet. The game keeps explaining. And that silence versus noise, that tells you everything about how each man is handling their legacy. If this deep dive helped you see the full picture, let us know what you think in the comments. Does the game's behavior damage his legacy, or is he just misunderstood? Is the criticism fair, or just part of the industry noise? Smash that like button, hit subscribe for more unfiltered breakdowns, and don't forget to tap the bell so you never miss what's coming next. See you in the next video.